is no man greater on earth except Jesus Christ than Joseph Smith. And that's written in the Doctrine and Covenants. And I not only quoted it, but I believed it wholeheartedly. And that's why I wanted to become expert in all things regarding church history and doctrine, to prove to these church detractors that they were dead wrong.
I decided I was going to be like a super Mormon, and I was going to do everything I was supposed to do, and I wanted to get all that I could out of Mormonism as a way of almost like through my actions proving that it was true.
About age 40, I decided to strengthen my testimony and do some research into church history.
I set a goal for myself. I'm going to really just get extremely serious about this. I'm going to reread the Book of Mormon. I'm going to go and read every church thing I might get my hands on. And I knew that maybe, possibly, it was not going to be that inspirational, but I wanted to learn. I wanted to know the truth about the origins of Mormonism.
I went to BYU and had a really good first year there. I was an English major, and I had, of course, with the English major, you read a lot of just literature about the world and things around you, and it just started, things just started not making sense a little bit.
It was when I was a graduate student that I got challenged by being a Mormon. I was trying to convert all my friends to the true church, and they were asking me questions and bringing up problems that I wasn't even aware of.
I was trying valiantly to read and study, but the more I read and studied, the more it appeared that the critics had some valid complaints and objections.
Things actually all started during my mission. I had an experience where a missionary companion, a very smart guy, loved the guy to death. He turned to me one day and he handed me a photocopy. And on this photocopy was a page from the Journal of Discourses from Brigham Young talking about Adam God. And up to this point in my existence, I had never heard of this doctrine before, and it absolutely floored me. My mission president was the institute director at Texas A&M. And so I made an appointment to go visit with him because I thought, this guy's going to know the answer. So I approached him and I said, what's the deal with Brigham's Adam God doctrine? And he flat out told me, he said, well, it's a theory like the flood. And I went, a theory like the flood? You know, the flood in Mormonism is a paramount doctrine. It was talking about, it was a reality, the earth was baptized and all this. So he spent 30 minutes trying to convince me that that's really what the reality was of the doctrine. And
I need to go to the bathroom. Then go.
Do you know how? Don't come and interrupt us, honey.
I'd always believed that Mormonism was the true religion, and that nothing could ever possibly disprove it. We know the first principles and ordinances of the gospel, and we know the articles of faith, and we know what a person has to do to work through the plan of salvation and make it back home to heaven one day. But I wanted to know the other things behind it, because the prophets of the church, especially the older prophets of the church, said a lot of things about the nature of the universe. They said a lot of things about what happens after we die, or what happens before we die. A lot of doctrinal issues out there that I understood to be part of the gospel. And so I tried to study that as much as possible, read a lot of history, never participated or read about anything that could be construed as anti-Mormon.
I wasn't reading anti-Mormon books. I mean, I was reading some church books I'd gotten out of the library. I was reading books I'd gotten from Deseret Books.
I wasn't reading anti-Mormon literature. I was reading the original sources.
I read the 7-volume History of the Church by Joseph Smith, the 6-volume Comprehensive History of the Church by B.H. Roberts, and most of the 26-volume Journal of Discourses. These were all church publications. These were not anti-Mormon or outside of the church publications.
I studied all of the materials that I could that were available from Deseret Book or the Church Distribution Center, and anything that was out of print but at some point had been published by the church. And every once in a while I would come across something that was a little bit troubling to me, such as the Book of Abraham story, the Kinderhook plates, or the story of Zelph, or any number of things that it just didn't cohere. I noticed that often Mormons would make excuses for something in one area using a particular line of logic or line of reasoning where if you applied that someplace else, it would invalidate the foundation of their belief, and vice versa. So there were these conditional reasons for believing in different aspects of Mormonism that didn't agree. They were contradictory. And to better understand that and try and understand how we could have these conflicting opinions or conflicting doctrines in the church, I studied even more, really believing that if I got to the center of this onion, after peeling off enough layers, I would finally get to some kind of nucleus of truth that is really only reserved for those who put in that level of effort. I was reading through all kinds of materials that I never dreamed were out there, BYU archives and whatnot. So I eventually realized that there wasn't anything more. The farther down you dig into this information, the more troublesome the church becomes. The overwhelming body of evidence that the church has to offer demonstrates clearly that it is not what it claims to be. I realized this is all there is. There's nothing deeper underneath this. And after really reading between the lines of the statements that the apostles and other people have come out with, I realized they didn't know either.
I'd been struggling, trying to fit all these contradictory pieces together, and they were just not fitting together. And when I put them with the idea that the church was just man-made, everything fell into place. It took me 3 years, but it finally dawned on me, almost like a revelation, that the church was not true. It was just a man-made religion like all the rest.
The way I ended up leaving Mormonism, ironically, resulted from my trying to help a friend. One of my friends called me. His son had been in my preschool when I was a young men's president, went on a mission while I was bishop. I helped him into the mission field, and my friend called me and said that this boy had left the Mormon church. This happened about 4 years ago. And so I thought, well, that kid was never the sharpest knife in the drawer, so I'll just get on the internet tomorrow morning and I'll find whatever troubled him and I'll call him and straighten him out. And the next morning I Googled anti-Mormon and began to read. Read for 3 solid weeks, 14 hours a day, and by the end of that period of time my Mormon testimony had crumbled, and I found out who wasn't the sharpest knife in the drawer. I called that boy later and thanked him for indirectly having been responsible for my exit.
I was rereading B.H. Roberts' book, Studies in the Book of Mormon. I had read it 4 years previous, but this year I was sitting in my seminary office reading it, and I had one of those real epiphanal kind of moments, just, I'd almost call it revelation, in that I had been balancing so many questions about Mormonism, as all ex-Mormons will relate, and as I was reading B.H. Roberts' book, it just in a moment, it hit me, this is all just not true. And it was an incredibly centering moment, I guess I'd call it, kind of a peak experience. Similar to the one that I guess I had when I believed I got my testimony in Mormonism. But I felt an incredible peace come over me in realizing I don't have to try to make all these pieces fit. I don't have to juggle anymore. This just is a fairy tale. And that just made such perfect sense to me. All of the things I'd struggled with now were no longer a problem. I would say that peace lasted for about 5 minutes, and then I said to myself, what in the hell am I going to do with my life?